Frank.
Thanks a lot, Morgan. We're now joined by Bob Biesterfield, whose company is the leader in shipping cargo from Asia to the U.S., also known as freight forwarding. Bob, thanks for being here and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Frank. Great to be here.
So let's get into it. Your freight forwarding revenues, those increased by 16% last quarter. Your ocean freight revenues, those increased by 32%, really signaling strong demand on that Asia to U.S. lane. What's the current environment like, and how long do you see it lasting?
Yeah, we're really seeing strong freight fundamentals as we enter the new year here. We've got a supply constrained environment really around the world, both in air, ocean, and here domestically on the truckload side. Given the reduction in belly capacity on the air freight side, it's had reverberations across the network and pushed more and more freight to the ocean. And as we've seen over the course of the last couple of weeks, we've seen significant delays in the ports on the West Coast, with delays up to 10 to 14 days, where normally that may be only 3 to 4 days, and significant demand, year over year up over 80%. So we feel like we're starting off the new year on a really strong foot from a demand perspective. And there's a lot of tailwinds as we look at the year that we think will have some staying power throughout the year. Yeah,
certainly a lot of tailwinds. E-commerce is one of them. Another big part of your business is trucking. Trucking rates highly elevated, 33% higher in October, November, 27% higher in December. I'm going to ask you again, how long do you see that lasting? And at what point do we see pricing increase even higher? Do people buying more? Does that just lead to even higher and higher in trucking rates?
Well, there's some tailwinds there too, Frank, and both on the supply side and the demand side. Maybe I'll start with the supply side. When you talk about some of those rates being up 20 and 30%, that's really representative of what we would refer to as the spot market, or that transactional market. And what we know is that transactional market really leads the overall contractual market, which is where most freight moves. About 85% of the domestic freight moves in that contractual market. But we've got some real supply constraints that we think are going to carry through the year. Overall employment is down in the trucking sector, and there's a lot of bottlenecks in bringing new drivers in. We've got delays in the driver schools. We've got some new regulations around the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse that has some constraints. And orders of Class 8 trucks up until the last couple of months have really been subdued. And so there'll be a lag before we can get additional capacity into the marketplace. You mentioned e-commerce on the demand side, but we're also seeing, we've had a really strong consumer dollars strong through 2020 and into 21. And now we're seeing some recovery on the industrial side and on the manufacturing side. When I think about coupling that with potentially a bigger infrastructure spending under the Biden administration, we think about some of the other tailwinds associated with a healthier economy and a reopening. We tend to think that there's some real legs to this overall freight environment. We don't expect, though, that the pricing that you mentioned, like a 20 and 30% increase, will carry forward, because many shippers are in the process of repricing their contracts right now. And while that'll lead to higher pricing in the contractual freight, it certainly won't be at those levels.
Bob, switching gears, let's talk about what happened in D.C. just a few days ago, the riots there at the Capitol. Your business is actually based in the Minneapolis area, and you saw your fair share of social unrest over the summer. What was your take on what you saw? And if any of your employees were involved in this, what would be your response?
It was a sad day in American history on Wednesday, and it's certainly something that I think we'll look back at in weeks, months, and years to come, and not look back fondly in our history. We're really fortunate to live in this great democracy in America, and the cornerstone of democracy is our ability to participate in the election and the selection of our government. And we had the opportunity to do that, and by all accounts had a free and fair election. What happened in D.C. on Wednesday wasn't about democracy, and it wasn't about patriotism, and it certainly wasn't about decency. And I'm really hopeful that as we move forward, we're able to come together as a society, certainly as our politicians are able to come together and disagree without disliking, and come together without demonizing the other point of view, because we've just got so much important things to focus on as a country about getting jobs and and we saw our jobs report today, getting jobs back for our economy, dealing with the political and the social and the racial unrest that is within our country today, and putting an end to this pandemic that has really dominated all of our lives for the past year.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.